I'm a great admirer of Elizabeth Elliot. Elizabeth Elliot was the wife of Jim Elliot, who was one of the 5 missionaries who were murdered by the people that they were trying to reach with the gospel down in Ecuador back in 1956. And Jim Elliot and his wife had this desire for ministry. And when her husband was killed, uh, sometime after that, Elizabeth Elliot went back to the people who had killed him. And she spent time there with her young daughter, continuing the ministry that her husband had begun. She has written a lot of books, and I think there's a lot of hard-won wisdom in them. And I recently read this quote. She said, "It is always possible to be thankful for what is given rather than to complain about what is not given. One or the other becomes a habit of life." And I think that's a really profound thought, that we either develop a habit of gratitude for what we have, and we develop kind of an abundance mindset that we have what we need, or we can develop a habit of complaining. We develop that scarcity mindset, often directed toward God. Why isn't He giving me what I need? Paul talked about this when he wrote his letter to the church at Philippi, and he said, "I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. I know how to get along with humble means, and I also know how to live in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and suffering need." And then he goes on to tell what the secret is. He says, "I can do all things through Him who strengthens me." That verse, "I can do all things through Him who strengthens me," is really specifically applied to the subject of being content in all circumstances. Being content when we have a little, being content when we have a lot. So I would encourage us today to think about those words of Elizabeth Elliot and the words of Paul, and to think about, what habit am I developing? Am I developing a habit of gratitude, or am I developing a habit of complaining? Because whatever way we're going, whichever one we're practicing, is going to be what develops in our life. But from what Paul tells us, that with Christ, we can be thankful even in difficult circumstances. We can be content even when we don't have a lot, because we can do all things through Him.